Hello and welcome to SentencingStats.com. I am Mark Allenbaugh, and this will be a short introduction to our COVID-19 statistics and data. Uh, Basically, what you can use our data for are for sentencing purposes, of course. That's our core area of expertise, as well as appeals. If you or your client are appealing a sentence, as well as compassionate release cases, and now 2241 cases. If your client is seeking release, our data can help you with that, with your petition for compassionate release, and this informational video will explain how. So first, our core area, and I'll be brief on this, is our sentencing statistics. This is just an example of one of many different types of charts that we can create for you. This particular chart shows what the sentencing distribution is for a select group of offenders. The 582 offenders that were sentenced under 2L 1.1 at a total offense level of 15 and criminal history category 4. And this is nationwide data. Of course, we can drill down to the circuit level as well as the district level, even to a specific judge. And our data comes from the U.S. Sentencing Commission's data files. So this is just an example of what we can show. This basically shows that 89 offenders matching this criteria received a within guideline sentence, and the bulk received under the guidelines. So this could be relevant, obviously, for sentencing purposes, but also potentially for compassionate release if as many judges look to what the original sentence was and how long your client may have served already in terms of the proportion of that sentence, whether it's been 50%, 60%, etc., and what other people have received that are similarly situated. So with respect to some of the data, we track the data daily that comes from both the Bureau of Prisons as well as Worldometer, Johns Hopkins University, and the CDC. So we track all that data. We have, as you'll see, data that is specific to every single county in the United States, and you'll see why that's relevant here in a minute, as well as, of course, the United States overall and the BOP overall. We also have data specific to each BOP institution that we track on a daily basis. So what this shows, and it's meant to be impressive and jaw-dropping, fortunately, because it is, it shows how many active cases, active COVID-19 infections that we have in the United States compared to some other select countries around the world as of September 19th. You could see we have a lot more active cases than any other country on earth. What this shows, and this is to impress upon courts the impact of COVID-19 on the Bureau of Prisons right now. It compares the active infections within the Bureau of Prisons per 100,000 population to the 10 most infected countries on earth. By the way, just as a note, even though Spain looks higher than the United States, this is artificially inflated because Spain no longer reports the number of recovered. So if it reported the number of recovered, that would be significantly lower. We actually do have the highest active proportion of active infections of any of the top 10 most infected countries on earth. At any rate, regardless of that, the Bureau of Prisons has even higher rate, which is very, very significant. This shows it's the same concept comparing the active proportion of actually deaths here per 100,000 to the 10 most infected countries on earth. And you can see that the BOP, while it's not number one in terms of number of deaths, it is number 3. Peru has the highest rate of infections, or of deaths, of the 10 most infected countries on earth. Then we have Spain, and then we come in a close third place is BOP, followed by fourth place Brazil. And still higher than the United States. What this chart shows, and this could be useful, I think it's particularly impressive for judges to understand when they're considering a compassionate release motion, is the government often cites all the efforts that the BOP is using to mitigate the infection and the spread of the infection within its facilities. Well, one of the ways that the BOP has been doing that is through placing inmates on home confinement via the CARES Act. They haven't been doing it very much lately, though. They started off in what this again. This is using BOP data. They started off some, I wouldn't say aggressively, but they started off rather consistently through July and had a big bump in July, and then almost nothing since early July. Less than 1,000 have been released under the CARES Act, while at the same time, the number of infections of inmates and staff has doubled since mid-July. You can see it's consistently going up. The point being is this belies, to my mind, belies the fact that the BOP is doing everything it can. Certainly is not releasing enough inmates. It's almost, as I've said before, it's bailing water on the Titanic. And the BOP certainly could be doing a lot more, which may help your client obtain a compassionate release, this particular chart also kind of the same theme here. It counters any BOP argument that they are doing enough to combat the infection. What this shows, as we compare the total population of all BOP facilities, that's BOP institutions, private prisons, and RRCs. We combine all of those and look at what the population has been since mid-April, and you can see it's consistently decreased. But notwithstanding this decrease, which by the way has slowed as of late, it's kind of plateaued here around 155,000. But despite this arguably significant decrease since mid-April, the active rate, the active number of infections is still increasing overall. It's now, there's over 2,000 more, or almost 2,000 more infections now than there were at the beginning of April, or since mid-April, despite this big increase or decrease in the number of inmates. And as you can see here, there has been a couple of large outbreaks here, which it's a little suspicious how they climbed up so high and then magically disappeared so quickly. And as I mentioned before, we do look at institutions specifically, and that first big outbreak here, by the way, was largely the result of an outbreak at Lompoc, where the BOP had engaged in mass testing. What was interesting about this, though, is you could see how quickly everybody magically recovered. They started doing testing in early May, got up to 942 inmates tested positive, and then they just stopped testing, and all those inmates magically recovered. So it's an open question whether there are still hundreds of infected there at the Lompoc facility, or at the complex, which is comprised of a U.S. prison, a camp, and an FCI. So that even though the BOP is now reporting that there are very few active infections there at the facility, it's kind of a dubious claim when there's no other, considering this particular drop-off. At any rate, this is just an example. Again, we do track every single BOP institution on a daily basis in terms of active infections and population. What this shows too is, as I mentioned at the beginning, is we track the infection rates of every single county. There's over 3,100 counties in the United States, and we track every single one, the data on those in terms of the number of infections and deaths. And so one of the things that has come up in compassionate release motions is institutions might not be reporting any active infections, largely because they're just not doing enough testing. But beside that point, what courts have been looking to is whether there are active infections in the surrounding community. And again, looking back at Lompoc is located in Santa Barbara County, California. And so what this chart shows is Santa Barbara County here, the active infections here in Santa Barbara County continue to grow, and we also look at surrounding communities. There's an interesting jump here in Kern County, which is next to Santa Barbara County. Not sure what this is, but Kern County does contain a very large state prison facility out there. At any rate, the point simply is that looking at the surrounding community can often provide insight to a court on the nature of the infection, whether there still really is infections there at the facility or not. Because here, despite no infections anymore at the facility, the surrounding county, the rate of infections continues to grow, and Santa Barbara County is a rather small county. I think it has less than 200,000 people in the entire county. So at any rate, this is just a brief overview of what sentencing stats can provide to assist you and your client, both in sentencing, the appeals, and compassionate release in the age of the coronavirus. Thank you.